Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Bienvenidos. Welcome to the Smithsonian American Art Museum. I'm Carmen Ramos, curator for Latino Art. And tonight we are pleased to present a second artist panel discussion in conjunction with Our America, the Latino Presence in American Art, an exhibition of our permanent collection that explores how Latino artists working since the mid-20th century participated in the movements of American art and recalibrated key themes in American art and culture. Before we get to the meat of our program, I want to remind our audience that this program is being simultaneously webcast, and for the benefit of our remote viewers, we ask that you please silence your mobile devices. Tonight we are joined by two artists whose works are featured in Our America, María Magdalena Campos-Pons and Freddy Rodriguez, along with another artist, Wanda Raimundi-Ortiz, whose work is not yet part of our collection. A major goal of Our America is to position Latino artists as active participants in the larger history of American art. The exhibition argues that their work touches on subjects that have been recurring concerns within the national cultural scene. The topic of race representation in African diasporic culture is but one of these subjects that is both ubiquitous in the history of American art and strongly present in works by many Latino artists. I'd like to just take a few minutes to elaborate on some of the terms of tonight's conversation. The title of our program is meant to evoke but a fraction of concerns that might generally fall under the rubric of race. It is common to hear in our contemporary culture that race is a social construct. Social scientists in particular have used this term to challenge the idea that race is a biological fact. Instead, they have argued that race is a set of changing ideas about groups of people that is shaped by social and historical forces. In the United States, racial categories have been molded by events like colonialism, slavery, expansionism, and immigration. Now, what does that have to do with the visual arts? Well, American art and visual culture has long played a role in perpetuating and eventually questioning racial categories. The robust history of racial stereotyping is but one of the ways in which American visual culture has worked to give meaning to race. The race and representation part of our title is meant to suggest how artworks, artists, or curatorial projects allow us to explore the formation of racial categories and how notions of Black, white, Latino, and beyond impact our lives and society. Yet there are also cultural and political dimensions to notion of race that especially came to the fore during and after the Civil Rights era. Artists such as Marcos Dimas, who were actively engaged in social and cultural protest movements, projected Black or hybrid identities that challenged the racial hierarchies that permeated American, and in Marcos Dimas' case, Puerto Rican society. For African American and Latino artists, this often entailed diving into the cultural dimensions of African diasporic culture, as is the case with Houston Conwell and Jorge Soto Sanchez, who both created works in the 1970s informed by their own intimate knowledge or willful study of African-based spiritual traditions. In varying degrees and in often overlapping ways, these and other perspectives have been present in American art. The question that brings us here today is how Latino artists working in the United States have shaped and or redirected these concerns. While we will hear shortly from our panelists about these issues viewed through the prism of their own work, there are additional factors that should be highlighted when considering race from a Latino perspective. For many Latinos, especially those who emigrated to the United States as teenagers or young adults, they also bring to the table different racial experiences born out of the history of Latin American nations, where official narratives of racial mixing or mestizaje were central to the ways in which they conceived of their national history and culture. In this regard, I'm reminded of the ideas of the eminent Cuban ethnologist Freddy Ortiz, who, writing in the first half of the 20th century in articles such as this one titled Cubanness and the Blacks, and this is a scan of my own much-loved copy of this article, rejected notions of a biologically rooted concept of race and argued that Black culture was an inextricable part of the national culture of all Cubans, an idea that would have been anathema had it been articulated in the United States at the same time. This example is not meant to paint a picture of Latin America as a racial democracy. In fact, across Latin America, there was and is rampant and unquestioned racial discrimination and racial hierarchies that privilege whiteness. Rather, I simply want to call out the ways in which race is viewed, discussed, and negotiated in Latin America, has its own particularities. We have a group of talented and wide-ranging artists that will help us navigate these waters. All three have cultural roots in the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, a region that, like the United States, was shaped by the history and aftermath of transatlantic slavery. María Magdalena Campos-Pons is a Cuban-based artist based in Boston. Campos-Pons is a professor at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and is co-founder of GASP Arts, a space for art, artists, and community in the 21st century. She is a recipient of numerous awards and has exhibited nationally and internationally, including the most recent Venice Biennale. Her work explores notions of diaspora, exile, the black body, and the complexities of place. In 2007, the Indianapolis Museum of Art presented a major mid-career survey of her work titled María Magdalena Campos-Pons, Everything is Surrounded by Water. Freddy Rodriguez was born in Santiago, the Dominican Republic, and moved to New York City in 1963, where he studied at the Art Student League, the New School for Social Research, and the Fashion Institute of Technology. He's received numerous awards, including a Joan Mitchell Foundation grant, and in 1994, he was one of 7 artists in Current Identities, Recent Painting in the United States, the official U.S. representation at the 4th Cuenca Biennial of Painting in Ecuador. His work will be featured in an upcoming monograph that is part of the Haber Revisiting Art History book series, a project devoted to documenting and interpreting the work of major Latino artists. In 2005, he unveiled his Flight 587 Memorial in Bell Harbor, New York, an award-winning public art project that was commissioned by the City of New York. Wanda Raimundi-Ortiz is an award-winning interdisciplinary artist whose work spans video, performance art, installation, drawing, mural making, and spoken word. She has exhibited both nationally and internationally in spaces and performance festivals, such as the Rapid Pulse Performance Art Festival in Chicago, the Gangnam Art Museum in South Korea, Manifesta 8 in Spain, and Trampolim in Brazil. She is a recipient of numerous awards and recognitions, including El Diario La Prensa's 2008 Mujeres Destacada honoree. Raimundi-Ortiz is a Skowhegan School and Ralph Bunche Fellow and is Assistant Professor of Art at the University of Central Florida. Each artist will give a short 10-minute presentation exploring issues of race from the perspective of their own work. After their presentations, I will join them on stage for a short conversation, and then we will open up the floor to questions from our audience. We have a set of microphones on either end of the auditorium. I encourage you to use those so that our remote viewers can hear your questions and comments. And following the program, there will be a reception in the lobby right outside the auditorium, where I will also be signing copies of the Our America exhibition catalog. So without further ado, I welcome María Magdalena Campos-Pons to the stage.
Thank you, Carmen, and good evening, everyone. I am very excited to be here, and I know that I have a very short time to propose a number of important ideas. The topic of race and identity is a complex one, and I think that I would like to propose that my work try to navigate throughout the complexities and the juxtapositions that identity propose. I choose to illustrate the conversation today a number of images of what I call a global journey. And in the global journey, what I usually say is that in my experience, as a black woman, I always go around the world with 2 bags, or 1 bag that in Spanish we call the alforja. It's a bag with 2 ends. And in one end, I carried always hope, determination, and commitment. And in the other end of that bag is all the baggage of what it means to be black, of what it means to be woman, of what it means to be Cuban. However, I tried to lift that bag with such an optimism that the heavy load of the baggage doesn't interfere with the possibility of the other side of my carry-on load. And for me, that would be the metaphor about race. I am so proud to be in this conversation and in this company. I am so grateful to be included in this exhibition at the Smithsonian. And I dream that one day it will be a totally different exhibition in which the necessity of call it Latino art, of women art, of black art is not necessary. It's just one more part of being human and making a mark in the process of making art. That's what I dream, and that is what I put every single effort in my making. Saying that, and with that in mind, I try to be insidious in how I explore that. Llegó FEFA is a project that I have been involved in the last few years. FEFA is for Familia en el Extranjero, Familia Abroad. And I'm going to show later the video of FEFA in Havana. She's not black, she's not white, she's not necessarily just African or Asian or European. She's all of those. And that is the reality of who am I, actually, and who are my ancestors. They are Chinese, they are European, they are African, and I'm trying to bring all this together, proposing a sort of a possibility of thinking in, could she be something else beyond what is written in the superficiality of the skin or in the superficiality of the appearance? Could she dream to construct herself in something else? Is a possibility for that. And then she goes around and she proposes some questions for the people that are around her. So that is FEFA. She's painted white, not with makeup. She's painted white with cascarilla, a sacred dust to cleanse the body, to cleanse the space, to call the spirit, to call the ancestor. So for me, this is very important. Before I ever saw a performance, as we call performance in contemporary art, before I ever saw an installation art, I saw two scenes. An altar in Cuba, which is an ultimate piece of installation art, and I saw magnificent performance of the santeros in my family doing this, which is an incredible tradition of performative experience of the body. Those two experiences of life as everyday manifestation have been very important for the construction of my work. I wanted to provoke a little bit in Cuba, and I dressed her with a kimono rather than a Chinese outfit. I'm going to move quickly because she arrived in Cuba with packets. She arrived in Cuba with baggage and delivered goods. So she's not just there presenting her body in a kind of a spectacular way. She's bringing effort, she's bringing things that Cuban people need and deliver it. And there are 500 packets of items the Cuban in the island asking for, and FEFA brought it back. She brought the embargo. She went against the embargo. She went against the limitation of what could a Cuban do or not do with a fellow Cuban outside the space of geography and the separation. This is the installation in the space, and she made bread in Cuba. Black women always did work. Wherever they go, wherever they went, they always were laborers. They were doing work. So FEFA talked a little bit about that. So the implication of race in the maid, the servant, the woman that always need to carry the baggage and do for others. But I think that she is constructed herself now in a spectacular way as a healer. So she's doing the work for pleasure. She's doing the work, nobody asking, is his own decision. There is another territory here. There is another strata of where this relation of race and hierarchy and authority and let's call it class is located. I am trying to be fast, and I hope that I don't do a disfavor to my ideas doing that. Fefa went to Venice as well, to the Biennale. And so here she is, and the title is 53 plus 1, etc., letter of the year. And this is the room that she would inhabit in Piazza de San Marco. That is her room. And this is the installation, 53 plus 1, 54, 51. There are 54 videos of Cubans inside the architecture of the bird, the architecture of migration, the architecture of maybe freedom. There are many faces that FIFA bring with her. I'm going to show the image quickly. This is the room of the emperors in a Palacio of Archaeology, Palace of Archaeology in Piazza de San Marco. She is still totally crusted in cascarilla. But the only lady in the room was the mother of Claudio. So Fefa became Claudio's mother at some point, because there were not many women, there were emperors. No one, a Cuban Latina woman as an emperor, emperatriz. So you will see, and this is, she is a carrier of an idea of freedom, of the possibility of above, and the possibility of something above is to be reached and to dream of and to go for it. So we like the idea of that. I don't want to talk too much about the whole structure of the cages. I will say that later when we're sitting. Every piece of fabric is a measure of a distance between Africa to Cuba, Africa to China, China to Venice, Venice to America. This is where she had been, all those places. And this is the accumulation of her desires and her frustrations and dream, and is a conceptual piece. Is no way to capture the distance ever. So we be after Fefa is gone, somebody could keep measuring. In each of the little balls is the number of what distance had been covered. Going fast. This is her in the Bauer Hotel. And this is the piazza that she wanted to conquer in Venice. And this is her conquering the piazza. This time she decided that, yes, the Chinese gown was appropriate and is an emperatrice gown. And she is surrounded by magnificent Cuban musicians of ancestral history with them. And she has in the hair a Yoruba hair piece and a Chinese dress. And she's wearing Sergio Rossi sandals that you are not seeing, but she's wearing them from the last season. And in that piazza, European, African, and Chinese merchants met and trade. And Fefa was, for the first time, the first Latina that ever conquered that piazza in full force. Okay. She's pensive. She's thinking. And she's calling the Yemaya, and the water is coming. You see beyond. And this is Cristina with los hermanos Arangos. We brought them from Cuba to Venice. And here we are with the great palace behind. And this is her inside the palace archaeology with the emperors and the feather of the peacock, always in the Yoruba crown, calling to the ancestor to be there. So, whiteness is not a color. In their case, Wynets, the painted of white, is a connection, is a line, is a way to reach for a spiritual conversation. It's totally beyond color. That's not mine. I did a few interpretations in photography as the practice goes from performance to photography. So this is in the interpretation in a 20 by 24 Polaroid, similar to the piece that is here in the exhibition. But the piece in the exhibition here is from 2004. This is 2013. This is FIFA in the series called Trap. This is Freedom Trap number 2. And again, the mesh, the distance is encasing her and eliminating, obliterating the color. I'm going to mention quickly before I move to the next piece that I did a piece in 1997 that is called Identity Could Be a Tragedy. That was very important for me because I only saw of Cuba and I only saw reflect in the construction of my identity as soon as I was outside both the limitation of what was black or of Cuba as soon as I was outside Cuba, and then I look back and I say, oh, this is the Cuba that I have not seen before. So for me, separation and distance was an opportunity to look back and understand the core of the ideas that were important to what is to be Cuban, what is to be black. I am interested in abstracting this idea. So this is Sugar Bittersweet for 2011. And it's a piece that is all about the different tonalities of the Cuban. So if you put 6 Cuban in a room, they are white, pale, to dark blue, like purple. And all of them have all of the colors within themselves, like Fernando Ortiz will say. So I didn't want to do it with the body, so I tried to remove the body completely and went to this piece that are African and Chinese stool and sugar and glass. But sugar and glass are very similar materials. But it's connected with another piece that I did before in which I say memory is like glass, fragile, sturdy, a little bit fuzzy. You think that you remember and you don't. You think that you know but you don't. And in that piece, something else. Sugar and not the coloration of mulatto, no? The brown sugar, the dark sugar, and the white sugar is a great history of love, but it's a great history of pain. I say in another conversation, those spears have double age and double meaning. They are so much about love and they are so much about hurting and piercing. So as much as they could be a spear to conquer the heart, a spear to kill the soul. And that is what the history of sugar means for the black body in the Caribbean and in the Atlantic and in this part of the America. It was piercing the soul to build some sort of beauty. And this piece is just about that. All the color of what race means in this part of the world, but without the body, but with the body imprint. I'm getting emotional, which is not a good thing. My mother told me that I am Chinese. This piece was presented first in China, in the Guangdong Triennial, and then in America, recently in Boston. It's all the history of the coming of the Chinese to Cuba to substitute the labor of a slave, and then the hybridization that took place. The fact that there are so much Chinese culture in our daily life. Anytime that you get your blood sauce bean in your Chinese food, this is what it was. So I did a piece in which I back to Chinese porcelain. My time is over. So I'm just going quickly here. And I show it Spoken Softly with Mama, which is about celebrating the women in the family who did the work. And this is Fefa again, and in the Queen's Museum, and I leave her in the elevator. Thank you. Ready for the next trip.
Problem number one, microphone interfering with my glasses. Good evening. Thank you for coming to listen to us and see our work. I decided that since I've been working as an artist for more than 40 years, I tried, and I only had 10 minutes to talk about it. So I wrote about 2.5 pages, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I've done over those years. Many of my works are informed by what I have read in novels and history books, magazines, and newspaper articles, and movies too. However, in terms of how I have used the African culture in my work, it is complemented by my personal experience. I use my knowledge of the African culture in my work to denounce racism, to celebrate the African contribution to our hybrid culture, and to infuse dignity to the people of African descent, as you will see in the work. I never thought much about our African influence while living in the Dominican Republic, even though it was ever present. The people, the music, and some religious practices. It was after I came to New York, and after I decided to become an artist, that I started thinking about it. It was the way I saw how black people were treated here. One day in 1964, I was going to visit a friend in Queens after work. I left work with Frank Butcher, a black friend I worked with. We got out at the 74th Street Roosevelt Station to change trains when a white man approached us and told me not to mix with black people like Frank. I was in shock. This would have never happened in the Dominican Republic. There is racism there too, but it is practiced very different from the States. There was never segregation in the Dominican Republic. 1964 was the year segregation ended here. Once in New York, people were always asking me, where are you from? What are you? That's when I started thinking about my hybrid identity and race with all its implications. It was not until 1971 or 72 when I first used race directly in my work. It was a very small collage in which I wrote, "Free the Panthers." At the time, I was working in a geometry style which continued until 1974 when I did the 3 paintings in the exhibition Our America. Around that time, I titled many works that made reference to the African heritage, like the song Kimbara Kimbara after Celia Cruz, Mulata de Tal and Mulato de Tal after Miguel Ángel Asturias' novel. I also made reference in my 1976 installation, Mil Imágenes Plus, by using images from the Catholic religion that have an equivalent in the Santeria religion. I continue using African reference in other works, like the small series In the Heat of the Night after the Sidney Poitier movie. But the African culture is very illustrated in my series about the cimarrón, or runaway slaves, wild animals. This series is informed by the book Biografía de un Cimarrón by the Cuban writer Miguel Barnett, and Roots, the TV series based on the novel by Alex Haley. African slaves began arriving to the island of Hispaniola in 1503. The first major slave revolt in the Americas occurred in Santo Domingo during 1522, when slaves led an uprising on a sugar plantation. Many of these insurgents managed to escape to the mountains, where they formed independent Maroon communities. They wanted to be free. This series is very personal because I identify with the Cimarron. What the Cimarron wanted was freedom, and that's what I always wanted too. It's the reason why I immigrated to the United States. In my case, pursuing freedom helped me in becoming an artist. Art offered me the best possibilities to be free. Freedom has a price, but for me it is priceless. Now we will proceed to see this 40 years in the remaining time. It's around 71, 72. I wasn't sure about the date, but I put the latest date just to play it safe. Isla de Cimarron, as I mentioned in what I wrote, the first African slaves came to the island of Hispaniola, where I come from. Warrior. The slaves had to become warriors in order to fight back, in order to get their freedom back. And this is one of the early ones in which I used this kind of image that I invented to represent the Cimarron at the very beginning of the series. It took different characters, like here is in the ocean. Of course, we were surrounded by water all the time in this island. Finally, he decided to escape, and then he goes flying. This is also taken from the Miguel Barnett's book, in which he mentioned that when the people were going to catch the people in Africa to turn them into slaves, they would wave this red handkerchief that is called punceau, the red punceau, and that they were very attracted to, but they did it in a friendly way until they were able to catch them and then take them away. And that's what this made reference to. At the time, I started a series of paintings using the calendar that the museum's modern art, MoMA, used to publish. It was very modest. That was a piece of paper that used to be behind there. And it was somehow a way of integrating what was happening in contemporary art and what was happening in my art. And again, this is the nightmare. When they came to the Caribbean, they were treated like slaves, like people with nothing. I did my first installation in 1976. At the time, I could not afford a photographer, and that was in the Dominican Republic. But I mixed different elements from the Catholic religion and Santeria in this installation. I also use sounds and smells, and it was probably one of the first installations that combined things that will be touching all the senses in the body. This is a heart that is used in some voodoo ceremonies in which they take flour and they spread on the ground to create that shape. I think you know probably more than I do about this one. This I'm going to give you a little more time so you can read. It's in 3 languages. These were taken from the same issue of the New York Times magazine way back in around 1978. On the left, there was a starving children from Biafra. And on the other side, there was advertising for clothing. And of course, the title also is from the Sidney Poitier movie, Guess Who's Coming for Dinner? I feel at the end, the last sentence, a little frustrated that us as artists, all they can do is to create a piece of art, but we need to do something else. We had to do something else for people to be free, to people to be treated as human beings, all of us, regardless of color. And I guess, in retrospect, this could be very autobiographical. It was maybe related when I left the island. I came to the United States, I was surrounded by all these things, the calendar from Museum of Modern Art. I don't know if you noticed, but the legs now take the symbol of the cimarron instead of the original symbol that I used, that you saw at the beginning, and it's the toes are cut off. This is something that I took from the series Roots. That was a very strong image, and it really impacted me. And it was to prevent the slave from running away. I think that says a lot. Actually, I have seen Richard Serra before 1986, but there is he was having an exhibition that year, and his work is at the bottom right of the collage on the calendar. That's what I said, well, we'll eventually meet. Here, I have painted a lot of black flowers. That was part of the whole thing about acknowledging and the black influence in our work. But notice that the flower, in order to bloom, refuses to go in the vase. Once it's in the vase, it's not free anymore. And I'm a hybrid, and I am part Chinese, in case you have any doubts. And of course, that must be me. I always think I did the right thing, so I took the logical steps. And on the left, there is actually the collage on the face that you can see there is Frank Sinatra. And basically, the reason why he's there is because I did it my way, too. And of course, this has a double meaning. As a color, I'm a colorist. I can use color. I feel very comfortable using color. And obviously, you can see the meaning of that. So I hope you have some questions for later. Thank you very much.
Well, y'all can just look. There's some technical, little bit of a technical issue. I actually, hi. While we figure out what happened, yeah, this is very uncomfortable, but it's okay. As a performance artist, I'm very comfortable with improvising. So, all right. Well, my name is Wanda Raimundi-Ortiz, and well, I guess I should just simply say why I do what I do. I was brought on this panel because I am the baby of the bunch, the youngest of the three, and also born stateside, born and raised in the Bronx. And I became an identity-based artist. I'm not really sure how that term actually came to pass. What really kind of guided my work was trying to figure out where I fit into this bizarre place. Ni de acá, ni de allá, neither here nor there. Not white enough to hang out with white kids, and not brown enough to be really exotic or ethnic. It was a very uncomfortable position to be put in. And I found myself always in this space between these two worlds. I was actually trained as an illustrator. And so what ended up happening with my practice, I became an artist kind of after the fact. I was trained to be an illustrator. Because I come from New York, the Bronx, the hood. The only logical step for me as an artist would be to be either one of those artists that draws for the courts, or a comic book artist. I actually wanted to be a fashion illustrator, and once I graduated with my degree in fashion, I realized I can't stand the industry at all. And it just like that's kind of a nice little segue. It actually is how I realized that what I wanted to do with my life had to have some more meaning than just being a hired illustrator, a hired gun. And I didn't want to do that. And people said, well, why don't you make art, why don't you do illustrations for other people? I said, well, first of all, I'm too cocky. I couldn't bear with being told what to do by someone else, by an art director. I couldn't handle that. I'm like, what do you mean, change the color, change the font? Are you kidding me? That's gorgeous. What's wrong with you? But then I realized that I felt like I had more interesting stories to tell. Because of my interesting vantage point, my unique vantage point. And so I started to ask myself, like, who do I look like? Do I look like my mother? Do I look like my father? An interesting kind of weird little sidebar. I wasn't prepared to discuss this, but it actually is relevant. Oh, no. Should we want to get my jump drive? It'll probably be easier. Do you mind?
Yeah, this is ready to go. If you'd like to show it.
Well, let me just give you this really quick little story. If you can find the one that says collectors, that'd be great. Thank you so much. The Astroleta collectors. It should be on my page. If you look for my name, Wanda Raimundi-Ortiz, in the thing, it should come up. Oh yeah, I have a YouTube page. Yeah, my mother, when my mother's mother passed away, my mom was only 6 years old. And so my grandfather, believing that keeping any icons of dead people in Puerto Rico, he's very, 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 very Afro-Negroide, had this very, very big belief that you don't keep icons of the dead because it was idol worship. And so my mother does not know what her mother looked like, and therefore I do not know what my grandmother looks like. She was also not allowed to learn how to read. So what was always nagging with me, and in addition to being this sort of weird hybrid, neither acá, neither allá, neither here nor there person, was also this nagging longing to document the story that ends at my mother, because there's no evidence of presence before her. And then here I am, and I have language, I have access to language, I have access to art making. This is way more interesting than anything any art director could tell me to make, I thought. And there were some slides that I had in the PowerPoint about 4 specific art pieces that really gave me the validation to make what I made. I want to cue it up to 6-minute mark. And then just pause it, and I'll go to it. Okay, what was I saying? It's great, it's live, right? Of course, this is how this is gonna go down. It's all good. Um, um, I ended up a visual artist kind of by accident. Like I said, I was trained as an illustrator, and I ended up getting accepted to the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, not knowing what Skowhegan was. I heard it was art camp, and so I showed up with charcoal and newsprint, ready to go, and I walked out a performance artist, hanging out with people like Tanya Bruguera, finally hearing for the very first time, sitting and having drinks with Fred Wilson and not knowing who he was, just knowing that he was this guy with an afro from the Bronx. That was awesome to me. But on the eve of that trip, that changed my life and forever changed the course, that actually has me speaking at the Smithsonian Museum of Art. Wow. Yeah, I'm freaking out, absolutely. Was a piece by Frida Kahlo, her wedding piece, which is Crying. And there was a big retrospective of hers at El Museo del Barrio, which incidentally was the museum that I went to that I felt entitled to go to. Because the MoMA or the Met just felt foreign to a little urban girl. My art experience was Brenda Starr from the newspapers, the fashion ads from Lord & Taylor, comics. Of course, I never saw myself anywhere in there, and graffiti, and rest in peace murals. Although I loved going, and I went to art high school, I would go to museums, and I never saw myself in the work. So I wondered, how do I not be an illustrator? How do I insert myself in this art conversation when everything I make seems fake? You know, my experience of the art world was always a white art world. And I was very keenly aware of my brownness, of my otherness, whenever I walked into a museum. So El Museo finally provided a space for me that I felt like I belonged there, like I can actually go there. And I saw works of Pepón Osorio, of Miguel Luciano. Oh my God. And then for the Frida piece, I broke down and wept uncontrollably because I realized that I finally had permission to make work that looked like me, smelled like me, sounded like me, that my story was as important as anyone else's, because if I didn't say it, no one else would. And then you have chuleta. If you don't know what chuleta is a Spanish word for pork chop, and that's her. Now, just tiny little sidebar. I know Rihanna showed up at one of those awards with her hair done in a doobie, and I know all the brown ladies were like, oh no, she didn't. Why she blow up her spot for? Why she went up there with a rap? And I'm like, I did it first. The chuleta character is actually something that I started working with in about 2005. It started off as a little bit of a joke. How could I explain, after going to Art Basel for the very first time and making sure that my hair was as big as possible, that my hoops were gigantic, and I looked as Latina as possible, walking around in these highfalutin galleries? I'm like, what? I was serious as a heart attack, too. You couldn't tell me jack. And so in a conversation, you have like it was myself and a friend of mine, my friend Susan. We're talking and we're saying, well, you know, we're these two clearly Latinas in this very, very whitewashed art world. You know, well, how do you explain this back home? And I said, well, how would I explain this to my niece? So the time was like 14 or whatever. She was super, super hood. Hi, Josie. Hopefully she's watching. I said, well, what would happen if I tried to actually explain the white box to my niece in a way that she understood? Because finally it clicked. The reason why I didn't like going to museums is because I felt I wasn't being spoken to. When I actually created the chuleta piece for the very first time, which is As Chuleta, the first one, Pepón Osorio saw it. He goes, this is brilliant. Keep going. to my face. I'm sitting there, Pepono Sorio's talking to me, and he's like, keep going, girl, keep going. This is important, to speak unapologetically, to not bend. I finally realized that I didn't have to make work for the white box, that there was enough of us to entertain ourselves with art and not have to pander to anyone else. If you didn't like it, don't eat it. You know? And essentially, the ideology that I have is like, well, all folks of, you know, from the diaspora, anyone who's not gringo, Gringolandia is where we live, right? All the outsiders learn multiple languages and multiple ways of communicating so that we can navigate our worlds and then also navigate Gringolandia. Gringolandia doesn't have to do much work to navigate us. So, let's ask Chuleta. I think this is the spot. Hopefully this is the place. This should be it. Okay. So in this video, Chuleta, she goes online and she posts these very, very lo-fi videos, kind of demystifying the white box and the art world, essentially to bridge the gap between the art world and people like us, okay? For y'all can know how this joint like really works, okay?
Collector bases their purchase on whether or not somebody says is worth the risk to buy the art or not buy the art, and ultimately, like, you know, it's up to you. It's up to you. Like, you got big collections like Saatchi. You know what I mean? Like, and like if you in the Saatchi collection, or like if you have like your stuff gets like to the MoMA collection, like that's it. That's big time, kid. That's blue chip right there, son. That's it. That's it. That's dope. That's what's up. You know. And, you know, most people, and you could be a collector if you bought a piece of artwork off your cousin Pepo. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's, I guess, you know what I mean? You buying, you just, whatever. But, like, you know, and once again, it's this thing about, like, well, who determines what's worth something, what's not worth something, what's it worth to you? If you got a couple of dollars, I think you should support whoever you want to support. You know what I'm saying? And, like, some people, they treat it like a business. Like, you know, you're going to buy and sell, like trading stocks. Some people buy because they just really love art. And those critics, those collectors, those are the people I think are dope. That they just buy stuff because they buy stuff. Like, you know who's a dope collector? Yo, Cheech Marin. Cheech Marin has the biggest collection of Chicano art, period. I'm saying. And you know, motherfuckers, we don't give a shit about Chicano art. I'm sorry, you're Mexicanos, but that's, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying, like, we don't care, but there's a, you know, a particular demographic that ain't really, you know, trying to fuck with your shit. But if it wasn't for Cheech Marin and those folks that said, fuck it, I don't care what anybody else says, I'm going to do this because I need to do this. I need to collect this work because it's important, because it matters, because if I don't do it, ain't nobody else going to do it. And, you know, who the fuck else going to go up in East LA and buy some Chicano art from some essay, right? Another Mexican. Go big up to Cheech Marin, I'm saying. Like, he ain't just a stoner, but that nigga right there, like, yo, I'm saying.
The funniest part of the Chuleta videos for me, and actually also painful when I watch them, is that when people watch online, and I'm a big fan of humor, and that's the thing I wanted to talk about a little bit when I spoke about Miguel Luciano's work versus Carol Walker's work. When I saw Carol Walker's work, it opened up this space where I can be pissed off, I can flip the bird, really? And people will still pay to see the show? Like, you know, I was still very much worried about creating work and afraid of being honest, because it was always about, and I think that has a lot to do with being working class, being brown, and pissing people off. Like, we don't have a right to be angry and public about it. Like, that's a wound that we have to lick on our own in the privacy of our own home. Like, we can't go outside in a doobie wrap. Why not? Well, you're gonna tell them how we do it? Why not? It's your hair. And by the way, it's a wig. I never straighten my hair. Ever. Someone said, you don't relax your hair? And I'm like, it's not stressed out. So, and I know I'm kind of bleeding in and out or whatever, but the Miguel Luciano component, first I saw Frida's work. Then I saw Pepón Osorio's work, because I had always been looking at Mexican art. Okay, but where am I? And if it wasn't Mexican art or whatever, then it was just the Lorenzo Omar prints. That's what I saw from Puerto Rico. But all of a sudden, I see this Pepón Osorio stuff, and it's capias. Capias, that's the stuff that we had, on a little, for the favors for the parties or whatever. I'm starting to sound like Chuleta now, aren't I? Art imitates life, honey. Then you have the Carol Walker, anger, and then comes Miguel Luciano, humor. Anger with humor. I love humor because you can tell people to their face exactly what's wrong, and they'll laugh with you because they know it, and you know it. And it's very, very sincere. And I'm nothing if I'm not sincere. The last thing the most recent work that I've been creating were those queen pieces. I'm actually starting to kind of move away from the Chuleta series because what I was saying about Chuleta was funny and painful are the comments that people leave. Mainly because they want to tell me you should get an education. I'm a professor. Okay? And people telling me what I should do when all they have to do is Google my name and 14 pages of how awesome I am pop up, but no one does the homework. You got an F for research. And so I'm actually I kind of feel like I've got 1 minute, and I love it. It was a green card. I love it. I feel like they're going to start doing this, and the music is going to come up and swell, and someone's going to come with a gown and take me off the stage. But the Queen series, which is a very somber series, are a series of, can we make them play just like the way they were going before so people can look at them while I finish my little spiel, or is it too late? Okay. I love that. We'll see what we can do. That works. I like that. I decided, I've been moving into the Reina series, and then Chuleta, actually, with her doobie clips, I've gotten very ornate lately, and I've gotten really interested in the idea of queens, and I always address my women as queens, and because it's important for us to exalt ourselves, because no one else will, I think it's very important to be proactive about how we address ourselves and how we present ourselves, even if we're goofing around with everybody on a world stage, at the Smithsonian. But still, like I said, it's about being sincere. And so each of the queens are archetypes of a very deep place that I'm in. The bargain basement sovereign, which is the red and black queen, I sit in performance and I sit and invite people to bring garbage and leave it on me. And that is, any time I've been in a relationship, I've been exalted and pooped on at the same time, and you kind of sit there and take it piously, because that's what you should do. The next one is the Guerrilla Reinas, the warrior queen, where if you get a chance to see the images, she's a warrior and a queen with no real land or no real sovereignty, no other warriors with her, and you don't ever see her fighting anyone else, and yet she's bloodied. You don't know who won, who lost. And it's kind of an emotional space for me, where I kind of feel like I'm always at the ready to fight. And, and that's exhausting. And so I have 2 other pieces now, and there's a little baby in there, so there's 2 more pieces coming up. Well, 3 more pieces. This is one. And then the upcoming one is Porcela Reina, which is the porcelain queen. And the one after that is Sangrienta Reina, which is the blood queen. The bloodied queen. And so you'll have to follow me to find out where those are. But thank you so much for being so patient and for being so kind. Thank you.
Our Smithsonian living room. And thank you all for your presentations. I wanted to start with a very broad question, which is related to some of my introductory remarks about how the subject of race has been really present in American art from the very inception of this colonial and then national space. And I wonder what your thoughts are, what Latino artists bring to that discussion, right? I mean, we've seen some common denominators in some of your presentations. I think notions of hybridity are clearly very important. A factor that I like to point out is how with many Latino artists, with many works by Latino artists, invoking race or African diasporic culture often sort of comes unannounced. It's sort of part of a larger conglomeration of issues. But I wonder if you can talk about and relay some of your ideas, on what Latino artists bring to this national theme and national issues.
I'll just open what I was talking about before the presentation began, when I actually was telling my students that they should log on and watch the stream. I have, talking to a bunch of undergrads at UCF, that a lot of what is going to be discussed is kind of hinged on this idea of marginalization and marginalization versus integration, and has so much to do with the work you're trying to do here at the museum. And the student asked me, well, first of all, the students did not know what marginalization even meant, and so I asked them, well, when you look in your notebook, where are the margins on your paper? And they're like, off to the side. I'm like, okay. You see, and so the thing that then starts to speak, and I think that then that I feel like that might be kind of an interesting way to kind of open up this conversation about the presence of the Latino art, Latino artists, or Latino body of work in the overall conversation of art, because I do feel like we're always kind of pushed to the side, kind of almost as an afterthought, or I don't know. That's kind of that's my very youthful opinion.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I see that. But when I look at your Chuleta videos, for example, one of the things that I think about is how they seem to be about what we might call a subculture, right? If we want to call Latino culture as a subculture within the United States. But what they make evident is that white culture is also subculture, right?
Indeed.
So it's kind of, so while they appear to be about Latino-ness, right, they're also about whiteness, right? And about those assumptions about what is culture.
Could I say something of that? I want to almost to reaffirm both of your observations, and it's almost like a rebirth the process. And just today, I mean, for me, this is an introduction, for instance, to your work. I have been looking at the work since we know the exhibition. And what I am excited about is of the possibility that we don't need to find one single definition for Latino art. The same way that is no one single definition for whatever other art that we're going to call out there. What I am excited about from this experience, to seeing you in the stage, and to seeing you performing a minute ago, you open a window of opportunity and a window of a possibility of expressing, representing some sort of aspect of what it means to be Latino, which is wonderful. I love that you refuse to be conscribed to the idea of the white cube, but I am curious to know more what is the space that you have in mind. That is a contestatarian space to the white cube. That would be for me what I am teaching. I am a teacher too, so I am very curious about what is this other space as a response to the construction of the white cube that is in your mind. You are 20 years younger than me, almost. Yes. Okay.
Fabulous.
That I am so excited, so curious about that. That is so valuable. That is so important. And yes, I would say the same that Pepon also, you say, keep trying, keep finding that. Do I am interested in that particular point of view? Not necessarily. I am interested in the white cube. I am interested in contesting, activating, reformatting, and pushing the wall of the white cube. I have an exercise in my class that is that. Let's make it dirty. Let's put it upside down. Let's strip it. But I think that the beauty of what you had opened in this conversation here and in this exhibition is that Latino is so many sins. That the Latina that come from the Bronx and the Latina that come from Manguito, Matanzas, who many people know what that is. Here, we could exist together and we could construct propositions of art making that are not necessarily excluding. And at the same time, I wanted to say, when I was listening to you speaking, we are, if I am right in this, if I have the data correct, the second largest majority in the country. We cannot be hiding anymore. We cannot be in the side of the book anymore. We are in the center. We are in the center. And I think that this is something that we need, I mean, this is what I say in the beginning. It's not that I am against a Latino show. I am already in the center. Doesn't matter what the other people think. Doesn't matter what the other people think. I am in the center. Brownness, blackness, we are the majority. So in some way, as you use the word permission, the opportunity, but I am, in my case, I am totally a conciliatory person. I love the idea that maybe my Freddy was telling me a minute ago, could I quote you? He said to me when I come back and said, your work have a lot of violence. And I say, yes, of course. Because, and they say, this is what they have done to us, but I say, but we don't need to repeat that. We have, I don't want to say better, but we have learned something that we should not want to repeat. I am a mother. I hope that my kid is a better human being and could become and do. So the idea of paying back with the same sword, that is not the auction.
Right.
I think that the idea is to, as you propose, what are the other opportunity? Chuleta, for instance. Chuleta is an interesting proposition of a Latina looking, you say humor and, what was the other scene? Humor?
Satire?
No, you say humor and anger. Humor and anger together could construct something quite productive. Because my call would be productive. What is that is productive? How do we construct a language that is, I am interested as an artist, attractive, in which I made this majority, that was the majority, that in some point and in some time disregard, disrespected us, mistreated us. Maybe it's still happening, sure it does, but in some way I don't want to slap in the face. I want to say, hey, I got it. Not that I am better, but maybe I'm sturdy. Maybe I'm a little sturdy, that I could still take it and pose myself graciously and keep going and doing something in which I show you, listen, we could be together. I am a believer of that, big time. That, and I am a believer that the 21st century is our already, is our. The 21st century is defined by the brown and the one with the many colors. So it's something there that I believe, I need to mention something. There is a Latina magazine in the US. I believe that I bought it for a number of years and then I refused to buy it anymore because I never saw myself in the cover. Ever. And at some
Same
point,
reason I don't buy it.
some point I was thinking, I will write to the editor, I will protest. And I said, well, okay, I am busy with other things, but, but that's important.
I'm going to jump in there with you because you talk about the where are we, and you talk about this space of opportunity. And thank you so much for the compliment coming from you. That's so. I mean, it feels wonderful to get that invitation to be part of this family. In the presentation that I had, I called it the Royals, and there was like the lineage, and then who the Royals were, and I found myself as the new debutante within this family of elders within the Latino art world, which you guys are all a part of, clearly. But what the thing that you mentioned about the opportunity and about the white box versus not the white box, I think has a lot to do with just this culture of being able to make something with nothing. If I were not the kind of person who always found opportunity in the rubble, I wouldn't be sitting here now. You know, I come from a culture of losses, of losing a house, losing a space, losing my studio. I was living in New York. You know how hard it is to keep an apartment or keep a studio space that isn't getting, an area that's not getting gentrified, that's not getting priced out, red line, this, that, the other thing. So I ended up, you know, well, how do you keep growing when your spaces keep squeezing? And, but that's exactly what we do within the situation that we're in, where of a situation of a form of oppression. There was a poet, and God forgive me for not remembering his name, but he wrote a poem about pegao, which is the rice that gets burned at the bottom of the pot. And he talked about all the white rice on the top and the heat from the bottom creates this pressure and this tension. But damn, it tastes so good what you get out of that. And that really impacted me a lot, and the idea of not having a space to show work. So I opened my apartment. I turned my apartment into a gallery. Started doing things in the street. Started doing performances on the steps of the mall, of the Metropolitan, until I was thrown out. Making videos on the subway with friends and hand sewing costumes out of things that I already had available to me. Because again, if I didn't make them, the stories were going to burn up and die, and I didn't even know that there was a protocol. Apply to this residency, find the money, do this thing, make friends with so-and-so. I just found whatever I had, and I just kept moving, and then the career unfolded after the fact. And so since that's how I came up, that's how I teach my students. Don't wait for the opportunity to open, break it down, and just show up.
Absolutely.
You know, just show up wherever, and the audience will appear.
And my situation is a little different, and actually, I'm sorry, but I was referring to my own work, when I said violence, because obviously I had not dedicated my life to just the subject of race. This is a body of work that is relatively small compared to the bulk of my work, which is basically come from an abstract tradition as a painter. But I also did so many different things in the process. That's what I meant when I said I did it my way. I don't expect anybody to come and say, this is good, this is not good. No, I do what I want. If I'm doing a geometric painting today and tomorrow I want a penny cimarron, that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. And nobody's going to tell me what to do because of the market or because of the critics or because of anybody. That's what I mean by freedom. That's what I mean by being a free artist, a free person, a thinking person. If I were in a different field, I'd probably be acting the same way and constantly going against the system, because what the system wants to do is to encase you, to enslave you. Actually, like they're using technology to do that today. People are working 24/7. They're working more than in the 60s. So I refuse to fall into that. The other thing is I also come from a tradition, talking about age, I'm 20 years older than you, probably, in which you were more focused in your work. That there was in school, they weren't teaching you about promotion and marketing and all that. And there was something very different, especially for somebody like me. I grew up basically doing things my way, always. And I was very lucky that in my family, my parents, they supported that all the time. Also because I did it the right way, without trying to break any rules, just simply trying to be free. And there are many ways that you can accomplish that. But the other problem is the market. If you come from a place where the market in the art doesn't exist, you have a problem, because recognition had to come from your own people first. And if your own people do not recognize your work, then nobody else is going to do it. And that's what she was talking about, the Mexican. The Mexican, why? Because there is a tradition there, a very long and excellent tradition of art. But in my case, the School of Bellas Artes was founded in 1942. It was not really a tradition of visual arts. There's still traditional literature, strong tradition in music, there's great music, but in the visual arts, somehow they turned me, or history turned me into like pretty much a pioneer in every contemporary medium, any contemporary style, and they still don't pay any attention to me. Actually, most of the work that you saw here has never been exhibited. And for different reasons. The people that they have the means to exhibit it, they feel that I'm attacking them or that I'm confronting them in relation to the work I show. If I'm dealing with abstraction, they think that it's derivative, that it's not original. They have all these angles, so not to let you in. And that's when the marketplace comes in. For example, some of the best paid artists today come from where? China and India. Why? Because there's tons of money there. And the people there are investing money into it. And quality. There were some of these artists who were selling their work 20 years ago for very little money. All of a sudden, boom. But that's not going to happen in certain places, including the Dominican Republic where I come from.
But could I say something about
Sure.
that, Carmen? I agree, and I am thinking too that I am kind of an analytical thinker. I try to always balance my Latina passion with some sort of rationality to keep my sanity. And I said, because in Latin America is no drama, it's melodrama. That's what they find out. But I am, for instance, how wonderful to have a Carmen at the Smithsonian, no?
Yeah, that means
But we need so many other voices, like I am following your line, critical voices, to decide, who decide that the work is good or bad or whatever, as Chuleta was asking, where they are critical voices, the person who writes in the major newspaper, in the major art magazine. So in that case, I am going to sound now conservative. I am a big believer in education. Because I think that prepare the road to create all those strata. Who is going to collect, who is going to write, who is going to publish it, be it online or be it in printing matter. Those structures are needed. And furthermore, we could imagine others. I don't like to talk and just talk. I founded a gallery in nonetheless the city of Boston, in the town of Brookline, which is a lot of very wealthy people around me, but me, the Cuban girl, found a gallery because I was unhappy with what was happening around. And the only way to do something was to show the women, I just don't going to talk, I'm going to do it. 10 years. 10 years. And who passed by there, I don't going to name the name, but go online and Google GASP and see the name. For me, that was the question of, I cannot be just unsatisfied and angry or whatever. I really need to do something very quite specific. At the same time, I was doing my work. It was a little bit heroic. It was a little bit, like I was thinking, like again, that piece that I show very quickly, that is the ladies in my family doing the work. And I say, when the floor was pristine, they clean it. The linen was, they stretch it. But I mean, if in some way, you do the talk, let's do the work. And again, I am trying to figure out, and I have been thinking a lot since I was invited to this talk, back and forth, what it means to make Latino art. I know that I am doing it because I am Latina. Sometimes I am no, sometimes I am Afro-Cuban, and sometimes I am no. I consider myself, you have a question for me about how important was the influential or the presence of African American artists such as my dear friend Carrie Mae or Lorna Simpson or Cara Walker or Adrian Piper or Betty Sara, naming all of them, and they come to my mind quickly. Fundamental, but I found parallelism. I found that I was thinking same scene in different places. And when we met, was like a love at first sight because we were doing the same scene. But I am not considered Afro-American. I am considered Afro-Caribbean. Why? I want to be Afro-American too. I have been here. I have been here for 20-something years. I have educated an entire generation of American artists. Some of them doing amazing. And why I am concerned about the silos, the separation. I am really a believer of embrace. We have a magnificent dish in Cuba, who really is one of the best things that could happen to this continental scene. It's called ajiaco. And in ajiaco, we put tons of different roots, tons of different juices, tons of different meat. Amazing. There is no one person that say no to ajiaco. The people that know ajiaco, this is what art should be.
I think we are going to open up the floor to some questions.
The timekeeper now, and we'd like to open up the floor to some questions. So if you don't mind coming to the microphone, presenting the questions, and that is because this is a webcast, and people would want to hear your question as well as the answer. So please come up. I'd like to tell Magda that you are now an honorary African American.
Thank you.
And you can come to my house at any time and eat some gumbo, which is the equivalent
Thank
of your
you.
dish too. Are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for being here. This was incredibly profound, and I'm so glad that I took the opportunity to come out. I felt like I learned so much, and I felt like I was in the midst of family. I wanted to just say, just listening to everything, Senor Freddy was talking about the cimarrones and the parallelisms with Alex Haley and Roots, and Senora Maria was talking about Senora Fela and the bird cages with the portraits of the Cuban women. And that made me think of Maya Angelou and her poem, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and the themes of freedom. And then Senora Wanda was talking about just being caught between two worlds. And I'm getting emotional myself. I have family through family marriage in both Haiti and Dominican Republic, and
Very good.
I'm Black American. But I wanted to know, and then Senora Maria was talking also about the silos, and that was actually a part of one of my questions. How can we encourage, and possibly it is through art, the people of the diaspora to dialogue and talk? I think that we are incredibly siloed, and we are brothers and sisters. How can we encourage that here in the United States and all across the world? And then my second question, with the immigration debate that's going on right now in the United States, some of you all have come as immigrants, and I feel that in the immigration debate today, the dialogue leaves out Black Americans and also leaves out, I think, immigrants, Afro-descendant immigrants, and how can we put their voices, encourage their voices in the immigration debate, which is so important. And again, thank you so much, and I definitely plan to stay connected with all of you. You all have really made an impact on me. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess I just wanted to maybe kind of, because that's a very meaty question or two-part question. I'm not going to deal with the silos. I'm going to let my elders, my compatriotas handle that one. But I think the way to get folks, I guess, introduced, you know, I think the recipe is very simple. Each one teach one. It's really quite simple. I teach a mixed media class at the University of Central Florida, and which is, it turns out, it's kind of like almost like an intro to conceptual art class. And one of the students noticed on my syllabus, that almost all of the artists that were listed were all artists of color. Wageshi Mutu, Abigail DeVille, and a whole slew of other artists. And the first thing that came up was like, well, these are all artists of color. And my response was, I'm going to be your cultural spackle. Because there's cracks in your education, and we're going to fill that. And that's my intention when I walk into the classroom. We're tired of seeing Matthew Barney in the classroom. And I'm done with seeing like Jasper Johns. Okay, I mean, not to disrespect, but there's so much of only one type of education that when I'm in the classroom, we're going to talk about some brown folks. And I think in terms of, it starts with me by not only talking about Latino artists, but making sure that I talk about María Magdalena, that I talk about Wageshi, that I talk about Kehinde, that I talk about, Kat Chow, this Asian artist. And I kind of start bringing people from all over the place. And, Jody Linky Chow and all these other different performance artists that I know and visual artists. So that I'm not just waving the Boricua bandera, but that I'm talking about all of us. If I address us as a family, then that's my legacy. And I don't even bother like breaking things apart. We're just all part of this massive, massive family, and we talk about it as such. And I don't even address it. It's like a non-issue. You know what I mean? And I think that if we work that way, and also more brown people in faculty positions, so we can kind of keep that going in higher education, that'd be very nice too. But the bottom line is each one teach one, I think. It's our job to get more people going to the museums, get more people participating in the white box, get more people doing abstract things. Open your apartment, do something funky. If you don't see it in the museum, ask for it. You have people like.
Well, I think that one of the goals of Our America was to break down those barriers.
Exactly.
Right? Is to think about Latino art as part of American art, and then when you actually look at the history, when you talk to artists, you realize that that's actually the reality, right? María Magdalena Campos-Pons is talking to Carrie Mae Weems and Lorna Simpson, and they know they're friends, and they engage each other, and Fred Wilson knows Pepón Osorio, and it's actually that's how the world actually is.
Yes.
What happens is that exhibitions don't represent that reality.
Exactly.
Right? So what we need are exhibitions, programs that explore those interconnections.
Exactly.
So I have a suggestion. I am the young lady who made the question. That was a wonderful question and a comment, and I don't have much to say. My expression about the silo was to say something about we should not be making compartmentalization of everything in a way, because I believe I have more questions than answers that I want to share with you. I think that for me, even when I am what is called a woman in the middle career or whatever point is that, I am still thinking, what is my role as an artist? And I am still thinking, what is that I need to be doing differently? And I am thinking what it means to be an artist in the second decade of the 21st century. When I am in Italy, in Milan, and I walk in the same street that Leonardo da Vinci walked, that is in my mind. I know that I have a call for something quite different, because that is important. I suppose that I don't have total control of the answer, but this is very, very, very present for me. I wanted to say too that when I think historically and ancestrally in how I become an artist, I go back all the way to what I know and I have learned of Africa, and I say, well, the highest art was there. The highest form of art, some of them were there. So they are, in my case, with the African ancestry in my lineage, they are such an amazing richness of culture. So all this, the idea, I want to contest very openly the idea of a canon that proposed a hierarchy upon exploitation and upon subordination of other people. That is what Latino art should be thinking about. I refuse to accept that because I was born with a dark skin tone or family of African, Chinese, or whatever the ancestor, my art is per se lower. I refuse that. That is a kind of a slave mentality. I am not a slave. I born a free woman. So I have the right to think and construct in those terms whatever form of art that I feel that respond and construct from my emotional and intellectual capacity. Nothing lower. Nothing lower. So this I would propose for Carmen, and I would like that this room would be actually completely packed. I am disappointed that it's not completely packed, because I am. I appreciate that you guys are here, but for the people that are not here, I am mad at them. And I want to say what I would like to say to Carmen, and I would send name to Carmen. I bring 4 other people who are not Latino to talk about this show, to talk about this conversation. That would be a way to engage. We don't need to live in a world of duplicity. We should confront the bull by the horn. Bring 3 writers and let's talk about Latino art. Some of the best art that is happening in this country right now is made by artists that are Latino of else. Some of the best art that is produced in the world today is made by women. That's how I start my class. And I give my student a list that is immense. And I say, by the way, I will not be teaching here 16 years ago.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, we have all this wonderful thing in the hand. So my position is, like the piece, Spoken Softly with Mama, there is no victim here. I am a winner and a survivor. I am a fighter. I am not a victim here. We have the right to rephrase and to reshift that language. And I think that you should let a pork, even for the
Yes, that happened.
Even,
I love that.
even for the vegetarian has
I
that.
was a vegetarian for 14 years while I was doing
So,
this.
so let me tell you, and I'm going, since we have in this conversation that is being recorded for the record, and I signed it, too late to change my mind. You know what I was thinking about you? I was thinking, good. She reminded me of Jennifer Lopez. Not that I follow but I say, no, I tell you why. No.
I have my reasons.
But
yeah, okay.
I am the beholder.
Okay.
This is important.
Yes.
I am your beholder.
Oh, gotcha.
How do I see it? Is my limitation.
Absolutely.
Is my limitation. So, but I was thinking, a fighter, and I need to say, I love as much Jennifer Lopez doing Selena, what that she did, as Wagner opera. I live with both, and that is my limitation. I live with both. I could cry with both. So, and that is for me. I want to be accepted as that I love so much Jennifer Lopez as I love so much Immanuel Kant talking philosophy. I do. I actually do. So that is for me. I don't want you to be encased in the, oh no, all that I need to love is rice and beans and plantains.
Right.
Actually, I love pasta.
And sushi.
I do, and I think that for us, I mean, we should have the privilege and the opportunity to claim that too. We cannot allow anybody to tell us you are just this and you cannot move here or here. For me, that is important.
I just have one tiny little charge, but it's important. And it might even piss a few people off, but you know what? Just don't slash my tires and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
And this is a charge that I say as a Latina artist from the hood. The Latino community has stepped up and stepped out in force to support Black movement because we know who we are in the Black conversation. But I have not always felt the same support in return.
But
And I'm saying this as an American-born New York City artist working side by side with a lot of African-American artists. And I have definitely been aware of a rift between the two communities that when shoulder to shoulder in the fight for equality, you can count on your Latino brothers and sisters there. But I've also seen the shoulder push back where you're not black enough. And I say that brazenly, humbly, to just remind folks that it does go both ways. And that even though I might be afforded the privilege of lighter skin, and I'm recognizing that, and it breaks my heart to even say that, and not in some mea culpa bullshit. You know, this does not lie. This does not lie.
I'd like to add a little bit.
Well, I just want to say just simply, I'm sorry, okay. Estoy bembeteando mucho. But that's a real, speak English, speak Spanish. But there is a need for that invitation to the table where we set our table, where we can have our gandingas and arroz con gandules and our cornbread and our chillings, and we should be able to do this both ways. I should not have to quantify twice to people where I don't ask them once to quantify in terms of exhibiting together, in terms of opening a discourse. The fact that there is a Latino show or the Afro-Diasporic or this and the Afro-Latino, whatever, and then you sort of feel that shoulder back, well, she ain't black enough, I don't know. Wow. And that stings. So I put that back because I will teach your art. Absolutely. I hope you guys teach mine.
But that's back to Carmen's question about
Okay, I want Freddie to
two
respond.
women that speak too much.
Okay.
I'm trying to be polite.
Sort of.
No,
He could tell he's married, right?
no, actually, what I want to say is that if you look back into history, let's put this whole thing in perspective. Every community has their own problem. And also the establishment have made a tremendous effort to keep those problems alive.
Yes.
To keep us separate. And they keep on labeling you different things and bringing things that will make you confrontational with people that you were supposed to be working together with.
Yes.
And that's one of the big problems. One of the ways to solve that is, first of all, is education, because you learn more, you're more tolerant, you're able to make up your mind and know when the establishment is lying to you, which is most of the time. So once you get education, you can make up your mind about things. But in the meantime, they make education right now so expensive that how are people that have those problems going to be educated, even though they keep on telling you, get an education and you're going to be fine. No, you're going to be in debt.
In debt.
The other thing is those labels that they put on us, there is a purpose for that. Finally, the label Latino is coming together after so many years. And eventually, it's going to be just more than just Latino. It's going to be the whole country, because the country is going to become brown, whether they like it or not.
Right here.
So, but we had to go through that process. It takes time. And we had to keep on working towards that goal.
We hijack your talk, man.
Carmen. And we'd like for you to join us in the auditorium lobby so we can further this conversation. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
come back and see us again.
Eres un monstruo, ¿sabes? You're awesome.
Monstruo.